We are breaking them down with NFL media analyst and historian Elliot Harrison. And I add that historian part to your job title, Elliot, because what we're about to do definitely involves some historical elements. That's counting down the top 10 Dallas Cowboys in franchise history.
Yeah, I like it. You know, we just did the Dynasty Week, and I saw the stuff that we did on the Cowboys, and I thought, you know, I think we really need to put out there the definitive top 10 on the Cowboys. Because when we did the top 10 through NFL Films, they included Tom Landry. You know, you're talking players here.
Great coach. Really couldn't throw that out pattern.
No, he was a coach. It's different, right?
All right, let's get started as we look at the top 10 Dallas Cowboys. Drew Pearson played for the team from 1973 to 1983.
Yeah, Drew Pearson, this was a real tough one right here. I was deciding between him, Rayfield Wright, who's in the Hall of Fame, but Drew Pearson just made so many clutch plays for this team. In fact, his nickname was Clutch. That's the Hail Mary in 1975. Also happened to be my favorite player of all time. Poster in my room at 9 years old. Pretty much cried when he had to retire. It stunk. That's the 1974 Thanksgiving Day Classic.
The original 88, by the way.
That's right.
Worth noting. How about Larry Allen as we move to the offensive line with the boys from 94 to 2005?
You know, it was tough not to put Larry Allen higher because I think Larry Allen may belong on the NFL's all-time team.
Underappreciated, if you can say that, too.
You bet. Larry Allen did play in another uniform, played for the 49ers, and he's an offensive lineman, so it was a little bit harder given the competition this franchise has. But make no mistake, dominant player and arguably the strongest man in NFL history.
Oh, God, heady bench press. All right, Mel Renfro, 64 to 1977, he was with Dallas.
Yeah, 10 straight Pro Bowls for Mel Renfro. If there's one guy that's too low, I'm going to go ahead and rip my own list here. What are you thinking, Harrison? Mel Renfro should probably be higher.
I'm going to tweet that.
Yeah, great player. Great player. For a while, they thought he was going to be a running back and kick returner. Ended up becoming one of the best corners to ever play in the NFL. When the Cowboys got Herb Adderley, a Hall of Famer from the Packers, teams threw at Herb Adderley and not at Renfro. That tells you something right there.
Let's move on to the next big number 88 in team history. Michael Irvin, aptly with the team from 1988 through 1999.
Another guy had to retire a little bit sooner than anyone would have wished, including himself. Michael Irvin was a clutch player, and taking him as the lowest among the triplets is really, really hard. A lot of things happened in Michael Irvin's career. Obviously, he got hurt early, had to miss some time with the suspension. But really, you could put Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, and Michael Irvin in a box, pull one out, and I wouldn't argue it with whoever you ranked as the higher Cowboy. And that game right there, too, 49ers could not stop him. Michael Irvin's greatest game, 1994 NFC Championship.
All right, how about this classic Cowboy, Tony Dorsett, from 77 to 87?
Yeah, Tony Dorsett, you know, one of our producers was saying in the NFL Now newsroom, how is Tony Dorsett always ranked below Irvin and the other guys from the 90s? He's really underappreciated, and I agree with that. Tony Dorsett was absolutely fantastic. He was able to win the Heisman Trophy and then come right out and win a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys. Think about Tony Dorsett. As he was great, the team was slowly eroding, Mark, and I think that's taken away a little bit of his career.
Well, certainly it's something that Emmitt Smith benefited from. We'll get to him in a moment, but first we'll talk about the quarterback that brought home 3 championships, Troy Aikman, from 89 to 2000.
Hey, spoiler alert, how do you know Emmitt Smith's even on the list?
Come on.
Just kidding. Troy Aikman, tough guy to place on the list because some people think Troy Aikman was good because of Emmett Michael. Some people think he's the guy that drove the bus. I know this, Troy Aikman was the leader on the team. Very few quarterbacks in NFL history have won 3 Super Bowls, and his playoff record is just absolutely outstanding. That's where he really distinguished himself. And, of course, legendary sportscaster Pat Summerall said, hey, he's the most accurate quarterback in NFL history. That would be tough to argue with.
I'm going to do this one with the accent. Randy White, 1975 to 1988.
Yeah, some people might
argue.
That wasn't bad. Didn't he have a barbecue place?
He might have.
Yeah, I think so. Randy White, some people might argue that Aikman should be higher because he was a quarterback. But the thing about Randy White is Randy White was the dominant defensive tackle in his era. I don't know that Troy Aikman was the dominant quarterback in his era. Randy White, a Super Bowl MVP, at least a co-MVP, a 9-time Pro Bowler. And again, when you're the best player at your position, you deserve to be pretty high on this list. And like Dorsett, he was great as the team started to decline. So people don't remember Randy White as much as they do the 90s Cowboys.
All right, going back to the guy we mentioned earlier, it's Emmitt Smith from 1990 to 2002.
Emmitt Smith, I picked him the highest of the triplets, and that really doesn't have anything to do with him being the NFL's all-time leading rusher. It has more to do with he was the driving force behind that offense. They did everything around him, and while the offensive line of the Cowboys was special, sometimes Emmitt Smith is underrated because of that. The Cowboys' offensive line started to show wear and tear and age and injury in the late 90s, and this guy kept churning out 12 and 1,300-yard seasons.
It's just fun watching him run right here. Hard to move on to the next guy, but we're going to have some good highlights, too, from Roger Staubach, quarterback of the Cowboys from 69 to 79.
Yeah, Roger Staubach, just a fantastic player. I know a lot of people would have him number one. He was the most winning quarterback in the 70s in terms of regular season record. I believe he was 85 and 29 overall. Think about that. That's a record. Won 2 Super Bowls, Super Bowl VI and Super Bowl XII. Started 2 others. And probably the original comeback quarterback, I guess you could say Johnny Unitas, then Staubach, then Elway. And it seems like that Andrew Luck has become that new guy in the NFL. But, boy, this guy was at his best in the final 2 minutes of a ball game.
All right, we move on to our last player, a fellow TCU Horned Frog, Bob Lilly, with the team from 61 to 74.
I love how you throw that in there.
Oh, come on, I got to work that in whenever possible.
Hey, TCU's got some good alumni, Sammy Ball, LaDainian Tomlinson, but those guys aren't better than this guy. Bob Lilly, the greatest defensive tackle in the history of the National Football League. I know former 49ers head coach Bill Walsh called him the 4th best player he ever saw, irrespective of position.
This is amazing.
It is. And you just watch the video of him. He's so quick. He just splits double teams routinely. This is a 29-yard sack on Bob Greasy in Super Bowl VI. The Cowboys of 1971, still the only team to not allow a touchdown in the Super Bowl. And Bob Lilly, Mr. Cowboy, is the greatest Dallas Cowboy of all time, period.
There you go. I mean, high praise coming from NFL media historian Elliot Harrison. But the list isn't quite complete because we've got an honorable mention here.
That's right. Chuck Howley is a guy I really wanted to put on this list. Couldn't find a spot for him, but I've been pushing him for the Hall of Fame for several years now. 5-time first-team All-Pro. First guy to ever win the MVP in a Super Bowl on a losing team. And he's just been completely forgotten in NFL history. I think Chuck Howley is arguably the most underrated player in the history of the National Football League. I'd love to see him get some Hall of Fame mention from the Seniors Committee. We'll see what happens, but this guy was best in big games, and definitely, he's one of the guys I read about in this book right here. This is like the first football book I ever read.
Well, that is dog-eared. That book's been read a bunch.
If you like NFL history or you're a Cowboys fan, you got to pick this up. You got to do it on eBay, I'm telling you. But Chuck Howley, amazing to me that guys from that era have been forgotten, and I just think it's with the salary cap era that we forget history a lot because guys are changing teams so much now that we don't remember the guys from the 60s and the 70s. I've always felt like baseball does a better version of, or better job, rather, of honoring their history. And the NFL's history is rich, and these players that we just pointed out, some of them, are as good as the guys today. And if they had the same training regimen and the same supplements and the same workout routines, I think a lot of these guys that played in the 60s and 70s could play with the guys today, including Chuck Howley.
All right, a great list from Elliot Harrison as he counted down the top 10 Dallas Cowboys in franchise history. Meanwhile, you can check out the top 100 players of 2015. 5 new faces crack the list as voted on by their fellow players. See them tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern on NFL Network.